Welcome back to Sportsbook Review Videos. It is a short-slated Monday evening of NBA action with only 3 games on the slate for you this evening. A ton more coming up here on Tuesday and Wednesday. However, that doesn't mean there still isn't some plays that I think hold a lot of value here tonight. We'll start it off with the San Antonio Spurs and the Brooklyn Nets here tonight. The Spurs come in as a 14.5-point road favorite in this one, total of 192.5. The Brooklyn Nets pretty much in no man's land right now in the NBA after firing Lionel Hollins and GM Billy King. Their season is lost. There's no sense in tanking because they don't own their first-round pick. And tonight they had to go up against the best defensive team in the NBA. And the odds have already been climbing upward from 12.5 where they opened to 14.5. And I think laying the points is the way to go in this one, just because the Nets are giving up about 105 points per game in the Western Conference this season. Compare that to the Spurs, averaging about 108 points per game over their last 10 and giving up only about 92 points per game during that stretch. And, of course, only giving up around 90 per game for the season. You have to think that without Jarrett Jack and with the way that the Nets have been struggling here recently, they're going to be very hard-pressed to get above 85 points in this one. In their last 3 games since losing Jack, they're only averaging 80 points per game. In 2 of those games, they failed to reach at least 80 points. And as long as Greg Popovich doesn't pull a bunch of his starters before this game, which is a concern because the Spurs do play tomorrow night against the Pistons at the Palace in Auburn Hills. So keep an eye on that news. But if the Spurs play everyone in this game, I think it's easy to play play them here laying the points at minus 14.5. Even if Tim Duncan, for instance, just sits out, but he's the only one that sits out here on the first half of the back-to-back. Still think the Spurs at minus 14.5 are a pretty good play, but make sure you keep an eye on some news because if they set out more than one starter, I think I'm laying off that one entirely. Next up is the Washington Wizards and the Chicago Bulls from the United Center tonight. And the Bulls come in as an 8-point favorite in this one, total of 207. The Bulls' offense has been very, very good, taking a turn for the better under Fred Hoiberg this season. But no love lost between these two teams since their playoff series a couple years ago. And even though the Wizards have regressed some since then, I still think that laying off the spread in this one's probably a pretty good idea. It's really sharp, and even though the Bulls are getting back Joakim Noah, and of course the Wizards still without Bradley Beal, I think the better play could be on the total here at 207, and over 207 is where I'm looking at here between these two teams, because despite the fact that the Bulls lost their winning streak to the Atlanta Hawks over the weekend, they still scored at least 100 points in their last 10 games in a row, averaging about 107 points per game during that stretch, whereas the Wizards giving up nearly 104 points per game this season, not only to the entire league, but to the East as well. And coming into this one here, the over looks like a pretty good play. It's cashed in 6 of the last 8 games for Chicago, and the over is also 7-1 for the Washington Wizards in their last 8 road games. So with the Wizards giving up a ton of points on the road recently and cashing the over with ease, I think 207 might just be a bit too low here. So take the over in that one, add it to Spurs minus 14.5. Those are your NBA picks of the day. Best of luck to you on both of those. Keep track of me tomorrow here as we come out with a much larger slate of NBA picks. But until then, for Sportsbook Review, I'm Jordan Sharp.